What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, I thought in this video I would continue with my top 10 all-time small forwards list. At number 10, I had, I believe, James Worthy, just to recap. Number 9, Dominique Wilkins. Number 8, Scottie Pippen. All right, so um, last time when I did this list, I had Rick Barry at number 6, so he goes down one spot from where he was before. Um, One of the reasons why I have Rick Barry higher than, say, some other people would have him ranked is because of the fact that, um, you know, I include the ABA. So that's one of the reasons why. Most people don't. They just include his NBA career. But Rick Barry did play 4 years in the ABA, and that should be added to his career. It was a professional league. So, but anyway, Rick Barry was noted for being one of the greatest small forwards in history of the NBA, one of the best players in professional basketball in the 1970s. Um, in particular, he was noted for, I guess, more than anything, his less than conventional free throw style, the granny shot, the underhanded free throw. It worked for him. For his professional career, he shot, I believe, 88% from the foul line in the ABA, and I believe 90% in the NBA, and overall 89% from the foul line. So it worked for him. When he first came to the NBA, he was known as a tremendous scorer, who would slash the basket and, more of a mid range guy. As his career progressed, he developed certain skills, particularly when he played in the ABA. And later on, he became more of an all around player, a more skilled player. Um, and he became more and more of a playmaker and passer as he got older toward his twilight years. And it was a tremendous change in his overall game. He has many kids who played in the NBA in particular. I think there are five altogether. Off the top of my head, I think I can only name three. That would be John, Brent, and John Barry, Brent, Barry, and what's the other one? Uh, 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 oh shit. Usually I would know the third one. I can't think of his name right now. I think he has another one named Scooter that played in the NBA, and I can't think of the other son that's more well known. Brent Barry, John Barry, and I'm just blanking right now. I can't think of his name. Jesus. Any other time, 99 times 100, I know his name, but for some reason I just can't think of it. Drew, Drew Barry. That's it. Drew. Drew. And out of those sons, there's one I can't think of playing right now. And I think out of his brood, the best is probably, I think most people say, was Brent. Brent was the best. But none of them were as good as his father, as their father. All right, so Rick Barry was known for his prolific scoring, 25,279 points altogether, combined ABA, NBA. That's the exact same point total that Reggie Miller had for his career. The difference is Reggie played 18 years, Rick Barry played 15 years. So Rick was the more prolific scorer. Rick Barry is the only player to ever lead the NCAA, the NBA, and the ABA in scoring. Um, Rick Barry was known for being very competitive, very feisty, very intense. He was a perfectionist. He could be very rude. He could be perceived as very arrogant. Um, and those are probably the adjectives that most stand out for him: rude and arrogant. He was not very well liked by certain teammates. Most teammates, actually. He was not very well liked by fans. The media hated him. And as we all know, if you get on the bad side of the media, after your playing career is over, that's when they get their revenge. Um, Also, the media can get their revenge when it comes to voting. Okay, I can get to that later on. But make no mistake about it, even though he wasn't a media darling, Rick Barry was an exceptional basketball player, and he won wherever he went. You know, he did not always have the most talented players around him. That's for certain. But he's one of the most gifted forwards we've ever seen. He's a precursor in many ways to Larry Bird. All right, so Rick Barry was born in 1944. He was born in New Jersey. He grew up idolizing Willie Mays, which is one of the reasons why he wears number 24 or wore number 24 when he played. And he was a prolific scorer even in his high school days. Great basketball player in high school. After his career in high school, after he went to high school, he chose to go to the University of Miami. And one of the reasons he chose to go there is because the coach that went there had a system and a playing style that was adapted to his game. He was, at the time, Rick Barry was a lean, lanky, 6'7", 6'6", 6'7" guy. He was athletic, pretty quick, and that offense was suited for his style. And in his senior year, he led the NCAA in scoring at 37.4 points per game. All right. Um, During the 1965 NBA draft, he was selected by the then San Francisco Warriors, although he had hoped to go to the New York Knicks. Sidebar: the Knicks chose, of course, uh, Bill Bradley, who was a decent player, fine player, but I don't think anyone would equate him with Rick Barry. And during that season in the game in Madison Square Garden, Rick Barry, this is the old Madison Square Garden now, Rick Barry scored 57 points and grabbed 15 rebounds. And I pretty much think that's a statement game Rick Barry made for the Knicks that you made the wrong decision picking this guy over me. One thing that Rick Barry had that Michael Jordan had and Kobe Bryant had, Shaq, they all had that grudge thing, They could hold grudges, even if it was just, an imaginary grudge, just to give them some type of competitive edge. They would do that. And Rick Barry was a guy that did that a lot, Like I said, this made him one of the more hated players in the NBA. He was not beloved at all. Like I said, even some of his teammates did not like him. In fact, I'm considering putting him on my stars who treat their fans like crap series. Uh, he treated his fans like crap too. And even in his broadcasting career, he got on people's nerves. There's an infamous video of him getting on Bill Russell's nerves with the grin like a watermelon type remark he made. You know what I'm saying? It's shit like that. There's those types of remarks that he would make. He made fun of people. Um, you know, I can get to a lot of this stuff a little bit later on. But the first couple of years in the NBA, Rick Barry dominated. Okay. Um, his first year, he averaged, I think, almost 25 points per game. He didn't struggle like some players do when it comes to NBA. He didn't struggle. He came to NBA gangbusters. His second year, he had his most prolific scoring year ever. That year, he averaged 35.6 points per game, which to this day is still the most points ever scored by a white player. It's just the truth, okay? And he was the All Star Game MVP that year. He scored 38 points, which at the time was the second most points ever scored in an All Star game. And in the NBA Finals that year against the legendary 67 76ers, who won in 6 games, Rick Barry was a one man wrecking crew. All right. I believe it was game 3 of that series, or it was game 2. I can't recall which one. But one of those earlier games, I think it was game 3, Rick Barry scored 55 points, okay, which at the time was the second most points ever scored in an NBA Finals game. And later on, Michael Jordan would tie that with a 55-point game, which he had in game 4 of the 1993 finals, which was 26 years later against the Phoenix Suns. That series, Rick Barry averaged 40.8 points per game against the Sixers, which is the highest scoring average ever in a finals until, yes, Michael Jordan broke it 26 years later in that very same series I referenced against the Phoenix Suns. Now, after these two extraordinarily productive seasons, Rick Barry he attempted to jump ship. Now, this is another thing that Rick Barry was accused of being: selfish. He was accused of being selfish, self-centered, greedy. One of his motivations was money. As I said before, the ABA was offering players more money. Uh, you know, this wasn't the friendly. This wasn't the player-friendly NBA that we know today. This was before free agency was instituted. It was kind of harder to just lead teams back then. A lot of times these things went to court. Okay, teams act like you were their property because of legal reasons. Rick Barry had to sit out the entire 1967-68 season, so he did not play, which got to factor into his career. Had he played and he stayed healthy, that probably would have pushed Rick Barry from 25,000 points to probably the way he was going at the time, 27,000 plus points, you know, higher, maybe even approaching 28,000. Um, so he didn't play that year, but starting in the 68-69 season, he played for the Oakland Oaks of the ABA, and he helped to lead that team to an ABA championship. Now afterwards, I believe the Oakland Oaks folded. Okay, I believe they folded, and technically I was correct when someone, I think it was Scorpio. Scorpio corrected me on this, but I was actually correct when he said that he didn't play for the Virginia Squires, but he did play for the Nets. Actually, he did play for the Squires, if I'm not mistaken. What happened is that the Oakland Oaks moved from Oakland to Washington, and they became the Washington Capitals. He was not fond of the move from Oakland, which is where he was based, to Washington, and he sued to try to get out of his contract. He was forced to play for them to honor his contract. Um, he was very productive the 2 years that they were in Washington. But then I think what happened is they moved again and became the Virginia Squires. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's where he drew the line. And I think he either, you know, didn't play for them or he left after a year with the Virginia Squires. You know what? Scorpio might actually be correct. He may not have actually played a game with them. So I take that back. Scorpio might have been right about that. Now that I think about it. I think he left when they became the Virginia Squires, and then he bolted and went to join the New York Nets. Uh, you know, and while he was playing in the NBA these 4 years, there was a lot of jumping around. It gets confusing. But he was a very productive player. I believe his first season with the Oakland Oaks, he averaged 34 points a game. And for his ABA career, he averaged 30.5 points per game, which is number one all time in ABA history. He's one of the top five players in ABA history. Him, Julius Erving, Artis Gilmore, off the top of my head, are probably the top three players in the history of the ABA. But after his 4-year tenure with the ABA, he went back to the NBA and played with Golden State Warriors. By that time, they had relocated to Golden State. Rick Barry, due to his time in the ABA, was a different player now. First of all, Rick Barry was 20 pounds heavier, not fat, but muscle. He was 20 pounds heavier. Now about 6'7", maybe about 210 rather than 190. Also, because he was playing in the ABA, which, let's be honest, textbooks aren't going to say this shit right here, but I'm going to keep it 100. The ABA was a more athletic league, okay, which featured predominantly black players who were very athletic, high flying, above the rim guys, okay? I'm talking about a league that featured guys like Connie Hawkins, Spencer Haywood, Julius Erving, uh, uh, Roger Brown, uh, who else I'm trying to say? Artis Gilmore, George Gervin when he was young, um, Skywalker, David Thompson. This was a more athletic, above the rim, physical league, more skilled guys. Almost like the goddamn Negro leagues of basketball. It was a different style, and they influenced the NBA tremendously, which is why I think the NBA should recognize the ABA stats more. But because of this, Rick Barry came back a more skilled player. He was a better ball handler. He was a better passer. You know what I'm saying? And this showcased in his more all-around game. He was also, when he first came to the NBA, he was kind of a bad defender. Okay, he was bad. By this point, he was at least average, not great, but playing against these black players, let's be honest, made him a better defensive player. And at that time, Rick Barry had added elements to his game. Now he had a bit of a back to the basket game where he would shoot his fall away jumper. Rick didn't have it at first. What I'm saying? He didn't take it to the basket as much, but he had an improved outside shot. That was the benefit of playing in a league that had a 3-point shot, which the NBA didn't add until 79-80, Rick's last year in the NBA. But anyway, Rick Barry was known for one last hurrah, which was 1975, on a team that, outside of Jamal Wilkes, who I believe was a rookie that year, or either it was his rookie year or his second year. I think it was rookie year. But outside of Jamal Wilkes, that team was not very talented. That year, I think Rick Barry averaged 30.5 points per game because the roster was so poor. He had to take on more of a scoring load. Paging Steph Curry. That's another example of a guy that was already past 30 because the roster wasn't that great. He had to take on more of a scoring load. Okay, but because of that, anyway, Rick Barry averaged over 30 points per game that year, and they went 48-34 that year. And in the finals, they upsetted the the heavily favored Washington Bullets. All right, 4-0. It was a sweep. It was a complete upset. And I think during the NBA Finals, Rick Barry averaged 29.5 points per game. He won Finals MVP. What was shocking to some people is that Rick Barry didn't win league MVP that year. I think at that time the MVP award was given at the end of the season, like how it is now. And I think the award went to Bob McAdoo. Now, Bob McAdoo had a tremendously dominant season, statistically, 34.5 points, maybe something like 12 rebounds, two and a half blocks, 2 assists. Great individual season. Um, but what Rick Barry did that year was special. And some people feel like the reason he didn't get that award because of his bad blood with the press, who had a say in that award. Now, the next year, the Phoenix Suns upsetted the Golden State Warriors, who won 59 games the next year and were favored to go to the finals. But the Phoenix Suns upsetted them, I believe, in the Western Conference Finals. The roster was more well rounded. Rick Barry didn't have to take on more of a scoring load, and more, increasingly, he was more of a point forward. Okay. Even though Marquise Johnson is credited with being the first real point forward, Rick Barry is playing that role as well. As his career winded down, um, Rick Barry became less and less of a scorer and more of a guy that focused on running the offense and playing decent defense, including leading the league in steals. This is a guy that was once considered a poor defensive player, leading the NBA in steals in his twilight years. He spent his last 2 years with the Houston Rockets, and by then, he was fading away as a player. But he was still valuable as a shooter and a passer at that time. And at the end of the 79-80 season, Rick Barry retired. Okay. Uh, Rick Barry finished his career, as I said, with 25,279 points. He won a championship in 1975. He was the NBA Finals MVP in 1975, an ABA champion with the Oakland Oaks in 1969, eight-time NBA All-Star. He was the NBA All-Star Game MVP, as I mentioned, in 1967, five-time All-NBA First Team, All-NBA Second Team in 1973, four-time. He was a four-time ABA All-Star, which altogether makes up a 12-time All-Star, four-time All-NBA First Team, NBA Rookie of the Year 1965-66. He was on the All Rookie Year of that team, of course. Scoring champion in NBA 1966-67. He led the league in steals in 74-75. So it was actually that year he led the league in steals. I thought it was a little bit later. He was on the 50th anniversary all-time team. His number 24 is retired by the Golden State Warriors. He was a consensus first-team All-American in 1965, the NCAA season scoring leader in 1965, and his number 24 is retired by the Miami Hurricanes. In the NBA, he averaged a little bit over 23 points a game. When you include the ABA, his professional scoring average soars to 24.8 points per game, 6.7 rebounds, 4.9 assists, and his 36.3 points per game in the NBA Finals. He played in two finals, 67 and 75. Altogether, he averaged 36.3 in the finals, and it's number one all time. One of the great players of all time, and a precursor to a guy like Larry Bird, and maybe even to an extent Chris Mullin, Rick Barry. Although I think he was better than Chris Mullin, but you get my point. Number 7, Rick Barry.